April 18, 1906. Day had not yet dawned over San Francisco when a rumble was heard from deep within the earth, and one of the most destructive earthquakes in American history tore through the city. At an estimated magnitude of 8.3, the first of 6 seismic waves struck at 5:13 in the morning, sending terrified citizens rushing into the streets. As awful as the earthquakes had been, the fires that followed were cataclysmic. The quake ruptured gas lines throughout the city, and fires broke out in more than 50 locations. The business section went up in flames, and fire swept rapidly toward Chinatown and the stately mansions on Russian Hill. Firemen rushed from their own damaged homes to help put out the flames, only to discover that the pumps were dry. The earthquake had also destroyed the water mains, and a burning city was left with virtually no water. With no equipment on hand to pump water from the ocean, the fire department was nearly helpless to fight the raging firestorm. For 3 days and 2 nights, the largest urban fire in recorded history stormed out of control. During that time, it consumed an area of 4 square miles, including almost the entire central business and industrial districts of San Francisco. Finally, on the 4th day, the fires were brought under control, and citizens were faced with a horrible reality. A city of 450,000 people had no food, no water, and half its population was homeless. Amazingly, only 500 had been killed, though thousands were injured. Hospitals had been destroyed. Looters roamed the streets. The city lay in ruins with the equivalent of $7 billion in damages. Army units from a nearby garrison were quickly called in to help restore order, and were told to shoot looters on sight. Food kitchens were set up in rubble-filled streets to feed the hungry. Thousands fled. The nearby communities of Oakland and Berkeley had escaped the level of destruction that had engulfed San Francisco. 50,000 newly homeless refugees were packed on ferry boats and given shelter across the bay. The ferry's return trips were used to bring back water, which was then distributed by horse and wagon. 9 days after the earthquake, the city was functioning again. But by then, the shocking extent of the disaster was apparent. Especially hard hit were the opulent homes of the wealthy, who lived on Russian Hill and Nob Hill. The entire area was reduced to rubble. Work crews hunted through the ruins for weeks, looking for bodies of the missing. Walls that had not completely crumbled were ordered torn down to prevent further loss of life from falling rubble. It also became clear that the long unheeded claims of political corruption were true. Graft, kickbacks, and bribes were rampant during Mayor Schmidt's 3 terms in office. The newly completed and overpriced City Hall bore mute testimony to the charges. Built in a classical style with a splendid dome supported on 3 tiers of pillars, City Hall had collapsed like a movie set. Upon inspection, the pillars were discovered to be hollow. The earthquake had exposed the flimsy skeleton of a building that was supposed to be solid stone. The disaster that struck that April morning produced several unexpected benefits. The corruption that was uncovered as a result of the quake led to a political house cleaning. Mayor Schmitz was thrown out of office and brought to trial. Other crooked contractors and civic officials soon followed the mayor to jail. The wholesale destruction of thousands of shoddy buildings brought the need for strong building codes into clear focus for the first time. Future structures would be built much safer than they had ever been before that fateful morning. The city rebounded with amazing speed. Aid poured in from around the world, and reconstruction began within weeks. Rising from the ashes, San Francisco was totally rebuilt within 3 years. Today, it's considered one of the most beautiful cities in the world. The 1900s ushered in the beginning of a fascinating century of innovation and discovery. But as the decade wound to a close, the world was heading toward a startling loss of innocence. The events of the next decade would be foreshadowed by the death of a king they called Edward the Peacemaker. Over the course of the decade, imperial rivalries and entangling alliances would lead to disaster. A world war was brewing, and uncertainty loomed as dawn broke on the 1910s.